Hello and welcome to Module 2, Preparing for an Interview and Interview Techniques, Best Practices for Spokespersons in a Crisis. Today we will discuss the task of the media interview and provide some examples of what to do and what not to do to be successful. Everything that is presented today is about giving you techniques, tools, and tips to help you take control of any interview in any setting, thereby increasing your effectiveness. You're watching part 2 of a 4-part series. The objective of the entire course is to provide you with the best practices and tips for service members to communicate successfully with the media and the public in a crisis. Your Public Affairs Officer, or PAO, at your higher headquarters command is an excellent resource for more information on these topics. Each of the trainings will take the form of PowerPoint slides with a few examples and will pose questions throughout to gauge comprehension. Feel free to pause the recording to think about your response or to go back and review a section at any time. In Module 1, Media Relations and Meet the Press, we reviewed basic information on the military's role working with the media in a crisis, media relations messaging, and we briefly mentioned the various types of media. In this module, Preparing for an Interview and Interview Techniques, we will cover how to prepare for an interview with the media in a crisis and identify interview techniques to use while engaging in an interview. In Module 3, Tips for the Most Popular Types of Interviews, we will review the most common types of media interviews and provide tips for a successful interview for each type. In the final module, Social Media in a Crisis, we will cover how to successfully utilize social media to communicate the crisis message effectively. Now let's get started with Module 2 and start where we left off in Module 1. This module will provide you the knowledge of how to prepare for an interview and will supply techniques to use while participating in an interview. We will also look at a few examples of interviews that have gone well, some that could have gone better, and we'll talk about why. In order to conduct an effective interview, it is vital for a spokesperson to maintain control. This training provides techniques, tools, and some ideas to help you successfully take control of any interview in any setting. When the reporter calls with a request for an interview, write down as much information as possible to help you understand the reporter's goals. Be sure to ask for the reporter's name, contact numbers, email, which outlet or news organization they represent, and what their deadline is. Remember, from the moment you answer a reporter's call or email, what you say should be considered on the record. Remember that there is no such thing as off the record, so always operate from the assumption that what you say and do with the reporter is on the record. As soon as you receive the request for the interview, inform higher command PAOs about the interview. Whenever possible, ask for their guidance. They will be able to help brief you, provide talking points, inform you of any events or circumstances you should know or avoid talking about, and they may even know the reporter and his or her reporting style. Be sure to establish ground rules for the interview. What are the interview time limits? Who are the best interviewees for additional details on the crisis? Where are the authorized locations to hold the interview? Also, remember to determine interview logistics before conducting the interview. Understandably, a TV reporter will want to do the interview where there are good visuals that help them tell the story. Keep in mind, though, that they should not videotape in a place where there is sensitive or classified military equipment, interior of tactical operations centers, or other sensitive areas. Use Operations Security, or OPSEC, as a guide on this matter. Radio reporters may only want to do a recorded phone interview, but if they come to you, provide a quiet place in which to do the interview with the same ground rules for OPSEC in mind. Mission accomplishment is the priority, but informing the public about the crisis in support of our partners is also a part of that mission. Now let's take a look at what that looks like in practice. Preparation is the key to a successful interview. Depending on the situation, you have varying amounts of time to prepare for the interview. Think of the media interview as a military mission. You must prepare to execute the interview effectively. At the most basic level, an interview is an information briefing in question and answer format. We will discuss your mission planning, a set of 6 key steps for an interview, in the next few slides. We have a public affairs officer on the team. She or he will assist you in preparing the interview. This often includes briefing you on who the reporters are, the interview style, what angle they're approaching the story from, what our partners are saying, and what related issues in the news you may be asked about. Develop one core idea that you want to convey. If someone only remembers one thing from the interview, what do you want that one thing to be? Practice your delivery to the point where you know your messages and can discuss them conversationally. Be confident in yourself and in the message that you want to convey. Keep in mind that you are the subject matter expert for the interview, and that's why you are being interviewed. With your expertise, you are able to maintain control over what you talk about and about how you answer the questions that you are asked. When preparing for an interview, it is essential to define your goal or goals in advance. Think about the outcome that you want and how you're going to help create that outcome. Identify what you want to accomplish. You want to support the defined goals of our federal and local partners, including the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, the DoD, and any local civilian agencies. Reassure the public that our partnerships are intact and demonstrate that partnership throughout the interview. Try and give examples that do not reveal sensitive information, but reassure the public of the partnership. Explain the issue well and help to amplify key messages. Set the stage for accurate and positive coverage of the crisis. Ask yourself well in advance, what headline would I want to see on this story? Focus on that one core idea throughout the interview and return to the idea as often as possible. Use this headline or core idea as the foundation to structure your messages around. Let's watch the following video with Lieutenant Colonel Mitch Utterback. But before you watch, please keep this question in mind. What do you think the interviewee's goals are? Now let's take a look.
We want to get to the press conference that's going on right now as well in Boulder. National Guard speaking. Let's listen.
From the town Alliance. The combined efforts of the National Guard helicopter pilots and the helicopter pilots from Fort Carson have rescued over 700 people. A couple really important things of note. The National Guard was here yesterday with their helicopters. They rescued about 200 people and their pets. Then that evening, the 2-4 GSAB, and I'll get with you later if you want the exact unit designation, but the helicopter unit from Fort Carson that was dropping water on the Black Forest fire was here flying last night under night vision goggles, and they rescued about 45 people. Today, that same unit got started early. They were out there again, and as of a couple of hours ago, that unit from Fort Carson had rescued over 500 people and about 200 pets, animals of various species. And they're still at it right now. Maybe you might have seen it on the news. Maybe you've carried it on your network. But you as a Coloradan and as an American rarely have had such a great feeling of satisfaction and patriotic pride than watching a helicopter taxi to the ramp and have citizens escorted off that helicopter to safety. I want to make a prediction, and I'll let somebody research it for me. I think what we have going on here in the last 24 hours is the greatest number of Americans rescued by helicopter since Hurricane Katrina. And that's going to continue. We're here, like we say every time the National Guard and the military rolls out. We're here until the incident commander and the sheriff say, we got this. But for now, we're here day and we're here all night. I'm going to step back, and if you have any specific questions, I'll be able to answer them now or near the end. Yes, please.
Concerned about rain coming in the overnight, with rain coming in.
That's a great question about rain, because we were actually grounded the first day because of bad weather. And if you see clear weather here, that doesn't mean the weather is clear at the air base where the helicopters are stationed. So we're always concerned about the weather. But our pilots, as you've heard me say before, have flown in combat for over 10 years. So they know how to push the limits, how to mitigate risk, and how to assess the situation. And no, there's no higher calling than saving the lives of fellow Americans, and that's what they're going to be trying to do.
After watching the video, what do you think Lieutenant Colonel Mitch Utterback's goals were? It appears that the goal was to inform the public about what's being done. Lieutenant Colonel Utterback describes the actions being taken by the government to rescue civilians affected by the Colorado flooding. The goal is also to gain recognition for the military's role in the rescue. As the spokesperson for the crisis, Lieutenant Colonel Utterback reports to the media about the specific actions being taken by the military to rescue both civilians and their pets. The last goal is to instill pride and maintain positive visibility. He details the long days and the valiant and encouraging efforts taken by the crisis responders. Sometimes when we deal with the media, we may forget that the people we are trying to reach are the affected public. It is important to identify and know your audience. You have to identify and empathize with them to know what their concerns are. If you are aware of their concerns, you can better address and answer their questions and concerns with relevant messages. Knowing the audience helps you to better understand the issues, topics, and core interests that are personal to a group. By understanding the needs of the audience, you are given opportunity to harness words, expressions, and an approachable voice that connect with them. So how do we find this audience? As mentioned earlier, the audience is the affected public. In a crisis, those impacted include affected community members, family members, affected residents, other interested individuals, special populations, including people living with disabilities, and elected officials. Even though response workers are actively involved in response efforts, they are also a part of the affected public. With these diverse populations impacted in a crisis setting, it is important to think about creating a message that meets you and your partner's goals and answers the questions your audience needs to know. Now that we have covered how to identify our audience, let's move on to another key aspect of preparing for an interview, knowing current events. In order to best prepare for an interview, being aware and knowledgeable about current events is a must. If you enter into a media interview informed about the hot topics in the news or in social media, you will be prepared to navigate around potential media landmines. So ask yourself, where can you go to get information on current events and issues that might be related to the interview? It's important for you to work with your public affairs officer because that's their job. The PAO's mission is to keep track of current themes and events and ensure that messages are synced with their command messages and with the lead federal agency. So you have just received a call from a reporter asking for an interview. The reporter wants an official spokesperson to prepare a statement on the ongoing emergency in the area. What steps should you take to prepare for the interview? If needed, pause the video and consider your response, or feel free to go back and review information from the previous slides. In order to prepare for an interview, follow the mission plan. The 6 steps of the mission plan include defining your communications goal. What message do you want to convey to the audience? Identify the message and keep the message in mind throughout the interview. Remember to support the goals of federal and local partners. Defining your audience. In order to best communicate the key messages in your interview, identify the populations who are affected by the crisis. Once you identify the affected public, you can fine-tune the message to ensure the target population's needs, concerns, and questions are addressed. Knowing your medium and reporter. Where will the interview be held? What is the reporter's interview style? Don't forget to consult with your PAO. Understanding the broader issues and current events that are happening in the news and social media. Your PAO will help you prepare for the interview and can keep you up to date on all the current events to help you navigate the interview effectively and efficiently. Developing and building your messages. You are the expert on this topic, which is why you were contacted to participate in the interview. However, make sure to stay on message with command and the lead federal agency. It is imperative to consult with your PAO to ensure the message is approved and follows protocol. We will cover how to build your message in more detail in the next few slides. Lastly, practice, practice, practice. As a spokesperson, it is important to practice your message and delivery. Feel confident with the message so that you are able to talk about the subject conversationally and stay on topic. Now we'll dive into how to build your messages to prepare you for the interview. As we discussed, if you're on the ground in a crisis, you will likely be supported by the PAO in your higher command. Your PAO will provide information that is verified, coordinated with other agencies, and approved for release. It will be up to you to take that information, prioritize it, organize it, make it your own, and successfully communicate it to the media. In general, there are certain characteristics that make good messages. Make sure the messages you receive from your PAO follow these guidelines. If they don't, work with your PAO to revise the talking points or add more detail. It is important that your messages and talking points are consistent and have been coordinated with the local, state, and other federal agencies. A command message should be succinct and interesting. It should support the theme or the headline that you have identified. Develop no more than 3 supporting messages. Each message should be 1 sentence long, around 10 to 15 seconds. You can always offer more details or talking points to support, illustrate, or explain your message. Talking points may be the operational details. For example, if your message is, "We bring critical capabilities," then your talking points should articulate the capabilities we have on the ground and what they are doing. Don't just say, "We have 700 troops here ready to help." The public wants to know exactly how you are helping and what the public can expect from you. Be specific about the mission and communicate how successful the mission was. Continue to follow the approved message and do not give away sensitive information. Simply being somewhere and ready to help is not helpful for the community. Continuing on the topic of how to build your message in preparation for a successful interview, the Defense Support for Civil Authorities have identified a few starting themes and messages for any response. First, express empathy. If the situation is dire or tragic, show your humanity and express compassion. Relate to the people who are going through the disaster. Secondly, highlight that we are here to provide support. Make sure to emphasize that we bring additional capabilities to the disaster relief efforts, such as debris removal and engineers to help local responders, the state, and FEMA. Finally, demonstrate resolve. Stress that we will be here as long as needed. Keep in mind, as the mission evolves, themes may be updated. Again, work with your PAO to determine which themes are appropriate for your response and how to best tailor the messages for a specific emergency. To finish out the topic of building your message, maintain originality. Make the message your own. When talking with reporters, take the messages from the PAO and convey your message in a novel way, meaning you want the public to understand, relate to, and appreciate the work the Army is doing to respond to the disaster. Know the key points that you want to make. You might want to type them on a card in a prominent place on your desk. Before the interview, review them often. Are they honest, meaningful, and to the point? Clear examples are key. You can say that the Army is providing ground support, but what does that mean to community members? What are the soldiers actually doing to help? Provide examples. Avoid jargon and acronyms. If your goal is to make your messages relatable, you'll lose the public in a sea of jargon. And don't try to memorize a statement. You could come across as stilted and pompous. Try and make your statement relatable and personal. Take a look at this video from the Florida National Guard with Lieutenant Colonel John Pelleriti.
This is our Joint Operations Center, and this is where we provide command and control and planning for all of the Florida National Guard domestic operations. So this is where we plan and execute hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, anything to do with domestic ops. We coordinate very closely with the State Emergency Response Team in Tallahassee. The Florida National Guard is not in charge of any domestic operations. We work in direct support of the CERT in the State Emergency Operations Center. So we make sure we've got really good communications with them. We've got a full-time major that works out there as a liaison officer. And for an event like the flooding that we've got going on right now in the Panhandle in North Florida, we've actually augmented that team with an additional 10 soldiers and airmen that are assisting plans and operations functions in Tallahassee. We're not don't have any forces employed on the ground right now. There's a lot of assets in the state that are able to do the tasks that are coming out from the counties right now, including Fish and Wildlife and Department of Transportation and local and regional law enforcement. So we haven't received any requests right now for National Guard support. We don't have any troops on the ground other than the personnel that we talked about in Tallahassee at the State EOC. We're ready to go for the flooding right now. In the near term, we've got high-wheel vehicles, rotary wing aviation, special forces reconnaissance, and boat teams ready to go if we are called. If there is a need out there that can't be met by any other means, we're prepared to go on short notice for that. And we're definitely looking forward to hurricane season and preparing our forces for hurricane duty as well. We're just monitoring very closely and prepared to respond when called.
Having watched the video, what do you think Lieutenant Colonel John Pelleriti's goal was? Well, he talks about the Florida National Guard's readiness for emergencies and how the Joint Operations Center operates. And after watching the video, do you think the viewer understood how the Guard supports emergency response? What did Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti do well? How could Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti have done better? Feel free to go back through the recording to review the mission plan, or collect your thoughts on the successful and unsuccessful parts of the interview. Some things Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti did well include that he spoke clearly. He stayed on message. He clearly stated that the Army was here to support the efforts. He also provided helpful information. The information provided encourages and reassures the public. He provided specific examples. And finally, he did not use acronyms. Acronyms can make interviews impersonal. Please try to avoid them. The interview clearly stayed on message. However, in what ways could Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti have improved the interview? Well, the lighting did not illuminate him very well, and Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti's body language could have been more engaging. Both verbal and nonverbal communication is very important for an effective interview. We will discuss this in more detail later on in the recording. And he could have provided more examples. Examples inform the public of what the Army is doing in the crisis response efforts. Lastly, Lieutenant Colonel Pelleriti should have recognized that his audience, the general public, may not understand how, quote-unquote, special forces reconnaissance could be helpful in a domestic crisis. Make sure to use language and terms that are common knowledge to ensure the message is getting across to the audience. Now that you have the mission plan rules to live by, you need to do some specific planning for your interview. It's these preparatory activities that will determine the success or failure of your interview. By being prepared, you not only will be more confident and comfortable, you'll be able to get your story across to the intended audience. Here is a list of tips for how to prepare for your interview. Inform the commander and higher headquarters PAO of the interview request. Find out who the reporter is and why you were asked for the interview. Establish ground rules on what will be covered and what you are prepared to talk about. Anticipate questions and brainstorm responses. Do your homework. Make certain you are familiar with the facts supporting your position and that they're up to date. Even if you're the expert, a quick brush-up will help. Question your own position. Have your staff experts play devil's advocate. Stay current, check the online news, or listen to the radio or TV news before your interview in case a late-breaking news story should affect your command and the interview. Thinking of a message and actually speaking it are two different things. Practice out loud. Work with a partner if you can. When developing your messages, think of practicing a 3-up, 3-down system. 3-up, 3-down allows you to brainstorm positive and negative questions the interviewer or audience could ask you during the interview. For the 3-up portion of the drill, ask yourself the best questions you would hope someone would ask, and then write them down. For the 3-down portion, ask yourself the worst questions you would anticipate someone asking of you, your unit, the Army, and write them down. Here is an example of a 3-up, 3-down drill on the slide. Let's take a look. Once you have written the 3-up and 3-down questions, the next step is to answer them. It is important to write down your responses in clear and concise language. The 3 best anticipated questions help to generate your messages. The 3 worst are likely your vulnerabilities, and you should be prepared to address the negative if they arise during the interview. Be prepared by working with your PAO. Keep your responses simple and be conversational. Provide simple messages that could become headlines for the sample 3-up questions. What do you want to convey? Message development comes from you. Ask yourself how you can best communicate your Army story. In order to best prepare for an interview, know your message. You can prepare knowing your message by practicing the 3-up, 3-down and delivering your message often. Bridge from what you were asked to your message. Remember to practice, practice, practice. Let's take a look at a news clip from the summer of 2008 that shows the importance of rehearsing and knowing your message.
CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is a brain surgeon. He's been looking at the new potentially life-saving helmet that some soldiers are going to be issued.
That traumatic brain injury, as you know, John, we've talked about this, has become one of the signature injuries of this war. How do you measure some of the forces that some of these soldiers incur? We started making some calls to the U.S. Army yesterday, John, and they were gracious enough to actually send not only a helmet, but also Major Bob Schaefer, who is here with me, to give us a sense of exactly what happens here. First of all, thanks for flying down and showing us this.
Thanks for having us.
So show me this helmet. This is a standard helmet that you've brought here, but it has something different inside.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. At PO soldier in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, we are focused on ensuring that we've got the new equipment, and right now we are focusing on improving the advanced combat helmet. This device that we're talking about right now is the helmet sensor. Helmet sensor.
There it is inside
this
there.
is it here. The helmet sensor will measure impact and overpressure on the advanced combat helmet. This is one of the systems that is internally mounted.
Right.
It's got 512 megs of memory, and it will record the blasts to the helmet, and will be downloaded later for.
I think that's interesting as well. So you literally take that little sensor out of there, and you hook it up to your computer, to the laptop computer.
Right. Well, essentially, this is a microchip. You have to remember, just a few years ago, they were using a steel pot.
Right.
Now we've got an advanced helmet, and this is part of the advanced combat helmet. You see here, this is the externally mounted helmet sensor. The soldier will have this on his helmet. He'll go into a combat zone and download this every 30 days.
Does this make soldiers safer?
Well, essentially, this will make soldiers safer in the long run. This is going to collect data that will be used by academia, by the medical community, government laboratories. Vice Chief of Staff of the Army last June directed PEO soldier to establish a consortium to find, test, and field these helmet sensors. And we've already started fielding these sensors to the 101st Air Assault.
So they're actually going to be used this spring, and thank you very much. It is an interesting demonstration.
After watching the video, what should have been his main headline message? Do you have any suggestions? What about the 3 up, 3 down we've been talking about? In this case, there is an important lesson learned. Many of the issues could have been resolved by practicing the 3 up, 3 down, by rehearsing for a live or recorded interview, and rehearsing in a similar setting before the media interview. As you will see, the Major is a great American and a decorated soldier from PEO Soldier at Fort Belvoir. He was unable to spend time preparing for the interview, as he spent most of his prep time getting from Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to the CNN studio in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's review. To prepare for an interview, what steps do you want to take before speaking with a reporter? If necessary, take some time. Review the material that we've covered so far before answering the question. Steps that we want to take prior to speaking with a reporter include informing your commander of the request for an interview, finding out who the reporter is and why they have asked you for the interview. Contact your PAO. They are likely to know more about the reporter, and they will be able to help you prepare. Establishing ground rules for the interview. Identify what will be covered in the interview and what your message will be. Knowing these details will help inform you and your PAO. Anticipating the questions that the reporter will ask you. We will talk a little bit more about anticipating questions later on in the recording. Do your homework. Make sure all your facts and figures are up to date and relevant to the interview. And don't be afraid to question your own position. This will help you prepare for what may happen during the interview. Finally, stay up on current events. Things can change at any time. Make sure you are informed of these changes in case they impact command and your interview. Believe it or not, you do have some rights of your own when dealing with the press. The general rule is to do all you can to help a reporter get a complete and accurate story in a timely manner. But you are not obligated to make that happen at all costs to you or your command. Don't be afraid to say no. For example, if aviation is a part of your story, do not consent to take reporters and photographers up without prior approval. There are very specific requirements here that must be met. Think about these before the event. For example, your higher headquarters PAO can help you with flight requests. The list of spokesperson's rights include, but is not limited to, being helpful and expecting the same. You have the right to be treated courteously. A reporter's questions might be pointed and tough, but there is no right to be abusive. If this does happen, keep your cool both on and off camera. Don't lose your temper when media representatives ask questions you consider inappropriate or foolish. Such questions are usually rooted in ignorance rather than in malice. Always maintain a confident and professional demeanor. If necessary, setting the interview length before the interview begins. You have the right to set reasonable interview lengths if it could detract from ongoing emergency response requirements or conflict with the commander's schedule. Although this is not typically an issue, reporters don't have all day either. Setting interview parameters. You can only speak to what you know. You should never comment on what other agencies are doing or how you feel about the response. Tell the interviewer what you can address ahead of time. If the reporter asks you about something that you can't speak to, it's okay to say, "I cannot speak to what other agencies are doing, but what I can tell you is," and that will help guide the interview back to your core messages. Being responsible to protect and ensure the safety of the public and colleagues. You have the right to say no to unreasonable requests that could be unsafe or impair or unnaturally alter ongoing response efforts. Enforcing the rules. You have the right to expect all prearranged and mutually agreed upon ground rules to be observed. If the reporter pushes beyond what's been agreed upon, patiently remind them what you can speak to and bridge back to your message. The list goes on, but the main point is to do all you can to facilitate the reporter's job. However, don't sacrifice good common sense. You both have professional responsibilities. The key is to work together to deliver fast, accurate, and timely information to assist the public and highlight what the military is doing and gain recognition. Now we're going to take a look at a classic example of setting the parameters for a media interview.
And we'll move them on. Let's not get stuck on the last storm. You're asking last storm questions for people who are concerned about the future storm. Don't get stuck on stupid, reporters. We're moving forward. And don't confuse the people, please. You're a part of the public message. So help us get the message straight. And if you don't understand it, maybe it confuses to the people. That's why we like the follow-up questions. But right now, it's the convention center, and move on.
Can you just understand a little bit more about why that's happening this time, though, and did not happen last time?
You are stuck on stupid. I'm not going to answer that question. We got to deal with Rita. This is public information that people are depending on the government to put out. This is the way we got to do it. So please, I apologize to you, but let's talk about the future. Rita is happening. Right now, we need to get good, clean information out to the people that they can use. Cool? And we can have a conversation on the side about the past a few months from now. Okay? Okay, do we have a question now?
Think about how Lieutenant General Henry sets the parameters. He was trying to tell reporters what the main focus of the interview was going to be and why. He was trying to get out public safety messages for the upcoming hurricane and clearly stated he did not want to talk about what went wrong in the last one. Even after disclosing the parameters of the interview, the reporter ignored him and asked Lieutenant General Henry a question he just said he did not want to focus on. He certainly enforced the rules. And he makes a very good point, but he may have insulted reporters with his very first few words about getting stuck on stupid. He loses his temper a little, which isn't the best way to show the military in a positive light. Ultimately, the public ended up remembering the famous line, "You're stuck on stupid." We also remember Lieutenant General Henry, but what about his main message? We don't remember his message of how to help the public stay safe. The message was completely lost. Now we'll talk about conducting the interview. Always expect the unexpected. Mitigate surprises by knowing your issues, messages, and how to deliver the intended response with your message in mind. Check your appearance. Your look and sound have a huge impact. A poor appearance can cancel all the powerful words communicated. You're on. When you arrive or when the reporter arrives, greet him or her professionally and cordially. You should consider anything you say on the record, so be mindful of what you say even before you are on air. Just because a camera, tape recorder, or mic appear to be off, it doesn't mean it is. Ask the reporter for a business card. Ask for and verify official press credentials. It's important to note that official press credentials are not as common as they once were, so a reporter might not have official credentials rather than an ID or a business card, but you can still ask. Build a rapport with the reporter. A good rapport from the outset will be key to your success. Rapport determines meaning of words, tonality, and body language, so therefore be polite, honest, helpful, and friendly. Ask if you can have a copy of the video or the interview once it's been aired or published. You can also make your own recorded copy of the interview. Many news organizations have policies against providing copies of an interview. If this is the case, ask your PAO to get a copy from a video news service. There's a fee involved, but they will make a professional copy of whatever airs or is published. Everything is on the record. This cannot be overemphasized. Know that you are always on the record. Any communication with a reporter is fair game, even if that conversation takes place in a bar, at the gym, or in a bathroom. Interviews are all about maintaining control. The first step to getting what you want out of an interview is to know who you are and why you are there. Know your area of expertise and stick to it. How do you master the art of controlling an interview to get your message across? It's simple. You must understand, practice, and use interview control techniques. Here is your interview control arsenal. Breathe. It sounds simple enough, but sometimes when we're nervous, we forget to take a few deep breaths to calm ourselves. So do that. Then relax and be yourself. Pause. Take your time. Listen carefully to each question and pause before answering. This will slow the pace of an interview and allow you time to respond. Repeat yourself. Make your point at the outset. What is the one core message you want people to remember? Continue to work on your core messages whenever you can. If you are not repeating your core message, it's likely to get lost. A little side note, expect your interview to be edited if it's not live. That is why it's important to keep repeating your message. If the interview is live, know that people may have missed the first part of your interview. They may not have heard your message during the first mention. People watching TV don't usually watch with their full and undivided attention. Be consistent. Reporters use a variation of their questions repeatedly to gauge whether you are consistent in your responses and or to elicit a better soundbite. Stay on track and rephrase your core message. Assertiveness. This is your chance to redirect the message if necessary. You can say, "I don't agree with you, and here's why." Do not repeat the reporter's words if you don't agree with it. Restate your position instead. Keep in mind, being assertive does not mean being aggressive or rude. Headlining. Use succinct, concise headlines to communicate a powerful message. Like a good tweet, you should be able to state your message in 140 characters or less. In the next clip, let's see how many techniques the soldiers use, particularly the captain during a Matt Lauer interview with the troops in August 2005. Lauer is on assignment with NBC's Today Show.
Talk to me a little bit about morale here. We've heard so much about the insurgent attacks, so much about the uncertainty as to when you folks are going to get to go home. Well, how would you describe morale?
My unit morale's pretty good. Every day we go out and do our missions. People are ready to execute their missions, and they're pretty excited to be here.
How much does that uncertainty of knowing how long you're going to be here impact morale?
Morale is always high. Soldiers know that they have a mission. They like taking on the new objectives and taking on the new challenges. We train the Iraqi Army time, and now they're motivated, ready to go.
Don't get me wrong. I think you guys are probably telling me the truth, but there might be a lot of people at home wondering how that could be possible with the conditions you're facing and with the insurgent attacks you're facing. So what would you say to those people who are doubtful that morale can be that high?
Well, sir, I'd tell you, if I got my news from the newspapers also, I'd be pretty depressed as well.
What don't you think is being correctly portrayed?
Well, sir, I know it's hard to get out and get on the ground and report the news, and I understand that, and I appreciate that fact. But for those of us who actually have had a chance to get out and go on patrols and meet the Iraqi Army and the Iraqi police and go on patrols with them, we are very satisfied with the way things are going here, and we are confident that if we're allowed to finish the job we started, we'll be very proud of it, and our country will be proud of us for doing it.
Over the next few slides, we'll continue to review techniques that will be helpful for any interview, like using nonverbal communications, painting a picture, flagging, and the bridging technique. Did you know that you say more than you think? Your appearance and tone of voice have a powerful impact on how people hear what you have to say. Can you believe that your look and sound determines whether anyone will be interested in you? This study by Dr. Mahrabian, PhD, suggests your words are not as impactful as your look or voice. This is one of the key studies used by professional communicators about on-camera believability. This research is still used by professional communicators to illustrate the power of nonverbal cues. Therefore, it's important to have the right attitude going into a media interview. Always remember, The only difference between nervousness and enthusiasm is attitude, so use your adrenaline to your advantage. New insights are beginning to be unveiled in an ongoing study showing the communication process is much more equally balanced between nonverbal and verbal messages. This slide here depicts a 50-50 split and is contradictory to the previous slide. Words do matter, according to body language expert Janine Driver. Driver states that the previous study is not representative of the full spectrum of body, voice, tone, and words. What is important is your body, voice, and words. These determine how people rate you and whether they connect with you. Driver describes this as the new body language. Just as you might be aware of other people's body language to accurately read them, you must also be aware of your own body language in order to portray the traits you hope to embody. Body language is not mind reading, and many times means absolutely nothing, but people will rate you based on their perceptions of your weak or strong body signals and your choice of words. Some examples of weak body language are slouching, shrugging of the shoulder or head, fidgeting, poor eye contact, appearing small, self-touch gestures including hands in the pockets, playing with your hair, picking at your cuticles or nails, wringing your hands, and cracking knuckles. Similarly, weak words and voice cue the interviewer and the listener to doubt you or your authority. Poor rapport results from statements like, "I never watch or read the news. You reporters are all alike." Saying nope with directive or using an angry voice can come across as rude. Continually saying, "I don't want to waste your time," with a dull or saddened voice and no positive message can cause the interviewer and listeners to lose interest. A great way to get the message back on track is to say, "I value your time. Let's get started about why I enjoy serving my country," with a confident and energetic voice. Now that we know so much more about our body, voice, and words, let's take a look at the messages you receive after watching this video with a more learned approach. What about their body, voice, and words? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Take a look.
Joining us now from Camp Victory in Iraq to talk about what's happening on the ground, Command Sergeant Major Neil Saitola and Command Sergeant Major Marvin Hill. What's it like right now?
Generally, I find that the morale of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, is generally high. If I was to give it a rating from 1 to 10, I would say the morale is tipping between a high 8 and a 9. Cool. What we do as senior non-commissioned officers and leaders, we ensure that our warriors are focused on the mission at hand, and that's the most important thing. Fight the enemy that's in front of them right now.
What do you need that you don't have right now?
People to be patient, sir. There are men and women, and I'm not trying to sound condescending or patronizing here, but the bottom line is what we're engaged in is going to take time. Sir, I don't want to lose any more troopers. And I'd prefer to go ahead and come home just like every trooper that's in this room right now. But we got some of the most dedicated and upstanding young men and women I have ever seen in the 31 and a half years I've been there. As far as what we need, again, we need time. You have some of the finest men and women that I have ever seen in all my entire life that are conducting operations over here. And if it doesn't make you want to beat yourself on the chest what they possess the capacity for, I think you need to go ahead and take a hard look at what you assess yourself to be or you might profess to be. But God bless all of you back home, all the veterans, all the old soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines who trained us to get us ready for this fight. They're the real heroes, too.
Ask yourself, how did the setting contribute to the interview? What about the setting? Was there a main message? If so, what was it? What about their body language? Eyes, hands, facial expressions, posture, connection with one another and the audience? What about the words? Did they have powerful headlines? Do you think they followed today's interview preparation tips? Did they have good stories to add to their words? And what about their tone? Keep in mind interview technique do's and strong body language. Strong body language will make your interview more effective, and listeners and reporters will trust your authority. Make and maintain good eye contact with the person asking you the question. If you are being interviewed with someone else, look at the person speaking. Otherwise, you are distracting viewers from their message. Have good posture. Standing or sitting tall will not only make you feel and appear more confident and truthful, it will also give you more oxygen and add power to your voice. If you're standing, plant your feet firmly apart so you don't rock from side to side. Use your hands to express yourself, but not too high so as to distract from your face. Your facial expression is an important part of the message you are trying to convey. If you are talking about a serious subject, don't laugh or smile nervously. Conversely, if the situation isn't all about life or death, lighten up. People want to connect with you as a human, which also means no sunglasses. The reporter and listeners want to be able to see your eyes. Another interview technique is called helping to paint a picture. This technique uses concrete examples such as federal military forces have cleared up 20 miles of critical roads, so now we can get food, water, and medical care to the affected areas. It's okay to personalize the stories of what you have seen and done. People will appreciate it if you can explain why your job is important and how you feel about being part of this important mission. An example of using a personal story is, we've rescued 400 people from their flooded homes so far, and we're still at it. We won't stop until we've made sure everyone is out of the flood zone safely. Humor may be useful in non-crisis situations, but avoid using humor during a Defense Support for Civil Authorities response. In an interview, you want to bring the story to life. We call this technique getting your PhD in communication. Personalize, humanize, and dramatize. Know that you must blend facts and feelings to connect with an audience. Be a storyteller. An engaging interview is essentially just a good conversation. Good storytellers either personalize their messages so others can relate by making a statement like, "Many of us grew up here. Being able to help serve our community in a time of need is very humbling and important to all of us." Humanize by saying something similar to, "Today we helped rescue several families. One boy told us his dog was still trapped in the barn. Once we got the family out safely, we went back in and were able to rescue his dog." Dramatize by painting a picture. A way of communicating using dramatization is, "We have 600 troops working day and night to clear the roads, help get the electricity back on, and deliver food and water to people in need." Now let's take a look at how one officer reached PhD on the next slide. To connect with an audience, be a good storyteller. An engaging interviewee is essentially just a good conversation. Good storytellers personalize, humanize, and dramatize their messages so that others can relate. Let's take a look at how one officer, Major General John Campbell, got his PhD.
For 1 year, Major General John Campbell has commanded a deadly dangerous 450 miles of Afghanistan that borders Pakistan. We land at this small outpost in a fast, dizzying pattern to confuse the enemy. But none of this, not the danger, not the death of bin Laden, not the fact that most Americans want to pull out, makes Major General Campbell want to stop fighting.
I know we've made great progress, but I think there's still a lot more work to be done.
This is our 4th visit with Campbell, and each time we have asked about the loss of soldiers. Last July, he had lost 28. He carried cards for each. In September, the number had jumped to 76.
This is Company Commander Captain Ellery Wallace. He's got 4 kids, 4 small kids.
And now, at the end of this 1-year command, the stack of 217 cards is so large he has to lug them around in his rucksack.
It touches me deeply, and you know, I've made decisions to put people in harm's way, and I will carry that with me for the rest of my life.
People look at a general and say, "Oh, generals never cry."
No, I do.
What made you cry this year?
I mean, every time you lose a soldier, I'm tearing up now. You know, you talk about it. Think about that family. You got a soldier that is killed, and his wife is pregnant, and that son or daughter will never see their father.
In this video, both the reporter and her subject, Major General Campbell, are the storytellers. Major General Campbell has a firm resolve and believes in what he is doing. He and the reporter use the cards to humanize, illustrate, and dramatize not only the dangers of war, but also the toll. Major General Campbell's resolve to carry the cards with him says to the audience, this man is not just a soldier, but also a human being. He keeps the cards with his fallen soldiers' pictures to remind him of who and what he is fighting for. Take a look at the lighter side of a soldier touched by tragedy while maintaining his sense of humor by using his PhD.
You've been able to do things that you enjoyed doing in the past, or were there activities that...
I've actually picked up a new activity. I didn't play golf before, and they told me they had an attachment for the arm, and I'm not very good, but I go kick my own butt out there on the course.
How does that, is the arm an actual club?
No, it's got two different ways you could, you put a different attachment in it.
So these come off, is that difficult to operate? Like, is it, let's say you're out and about and it seizes up, or does an engine light go on? Like what would you do in a situation?
I carry a spare. A lot of my guys, there's a lot of guys overseas fighting still that have, one of my Ranger buddies with a missing leg. He's been overseas numerous times since he's lost a leg, and he carries a spare leg in his back.
That must be, other than a recipe for incredible practical jokes.
You can see the power of preparation and the effective use of a real human story. Sergeant First Class LaTroy Petrie trained for the task and found his own delivery style using his prop, humor, and spontaneous style. Find your own comfort zone and keep building on that. And remember to practice, practice, practice. One more example of an effective interview technique is flagging. Flag phrases such as, "What's really important for people to remember is," or "the bottom line is," serve as an alert to the listener that you are about to say something important. It also can help you organize your response. The three most important aspects are: an additional interview technique is block and bridge. If asked a question you cannot answer, use the bridging phrase followed by one of your messages. The state can give you the number of injured. What I can tell you is our team is bringing in additional military helicopters and engineers to help, and we will be here as long as needed. Using the block and bridge equation allows you to avoid saying something on behalf of somebody else. Examples of bridging phrases that can help you connect from the question that was asked to the answer that you want to give are yes, no, or I don't know, and then follow your statement with, but what I do know is. Another point I should make is. What's also interesting to note is. Here's what we've done as a result of that. What's important to keep in mind is. Let me put that into perspective. And what's more interesting is that pick one that suits you and practice it. The power of communication is something you are capable of doing effectively and confidently. And remember to practice, practice, practice. Let's see how Specialist Henderson, the 2009 Soldier of the Year, used the interview equation to communicate his intended message. Take a look.
Just to give you a background, once again, 24 of the best soldiers from across the country face off in the 6-day competition. And of course, right here in Longmont, he has been named the Soldier of the Year. And Specialist Clancy Henderson joins us this morning from Washington. Good morning. Can you hear us?
I can. Good morning.
With a pretty cool title, we must admit here, Soldier of the Year. So what do you get to win when you get this title?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of prizes that come from sponsors that encourage the competitions, but that's not really what the competition is about. It's about coming out here and demonstrating what your unit has trained you to do. And that's really the biggest thing that we all take away from this is the training and the experts gain.
Yeah, just the pride in it all is the biggest prize, but I'd say you need a new Corvette. This is me, one guy talking, I don't know. Hey, I got to ask you, since you're from Longmont.
I wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah, you wouldn't turn it down. We'll work on that together. So what's next now that you've won this? What's next on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm back to my unit and going to continue working there. They'll have me come out to D.C. every once in a while, I'm told, to participate in a few events, maybe speak, and hopefully try and help people understand a little bit more about the Army.
Well, we are very proud, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for putting Colorado out there and having the title of Soldier of the Year. So again, congratulations to you, Specialist Clancy Henderson.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, have a good day.
When asked about the prize, in response he says, there are a lot of prizes, confirming the facts were the obvious, but that is not what the competition is about. And here he goes to his prepared training message. It's about coming out and demonstrating what your unit has trained you to do. The biggest thing we all take away from this, and that's flagging to draw attention, is the training. Next, when the reporter brings up the new Corvette, a little humor that shows the spontaneous and likable attributes of Specialist Henderson. He had an opening and a closing. He trained to the task. A side note to keep in mind when being interviewed. Roger Ailes, a renowned communications coach and professional communicator, teaches that you are really the message. It is your personal delivery and stories that make all the difference. Find the Army messenger in you. Now let's cover how to work with the press if they just show up unannounced. Take a look at this example when reporter Mark Greenblatt of KHOU-TV questioned recruiter Sergeant Thomas Kelly.
Reporter Mark Greenblatt of KHOU-TV questioned recruiter Sergeant Thomas Kelt.
I'd just like to know why you have called up young men threatening to arrest them if they don't come and talk to you.
No comment.
You told the young man that this is a standard marketing technique that you use. Is that true?
No comment.
The case is under an Army investigation.
Now, after watching the video, how do you think the interview went? Ask yourself, is this person in control? What about the body language? What was conveyed there? Do you feel like this individual was trained and prepared to be speaking with the press? Was this an ambush? What could have the soldier done better? You never want to say no comment. It comes across as defensive and suggests that you are hiding something. You need to know what is fair. If asked about something that is proprietary or classified, do not say no comment. Simply state that you can't discuss the matter, and then say why, and then bridge back to your message. That information is classified, so I'm not at liberty to discuss it, but what I can tell you is this. There is nothing wrong with deferring an interview until you have a fax of approval with a designated message and asked to represent the Army as a spokesperson. Refer media to the Public Affairs Office or representative. Make sure to have the PAO's contact information with you at all times. We recommend getting the reporter's name, affiliation, contact information, and reason for the call to pass to the PAO. Body language tells us a lot about a person, but it's not mind reading. In this case, the soldier looks dishonest and deceitful simply because he does not make good eye contact. His eyes shift and he's hunched over in his seat. His slumped posture with shrugging of shoulders, a shift and push away from the reporter indicates he wants to get away and hide. He uses the classic deceit cluster of body language as he looks away with both eyebrows raised to the disbelief position, suggesting nervousness, lack of control, and guilt. How could he have fixed the interview? Well, he could have projected a professional bearing and confidence by standing and leaning toward the reporter with an open palm and handshake and saying, "Well, I didn't know you were coming. Let me go get my supervisor. Can I get you some water?" Be helpful and confident. Do you know where to send reporters if they show up unannounced or if they contact you directly? When developing your messages, consider the following tips. Be open, transparent, and be candid. Don't evade. If a question is one you can't answer, say so and why. Tell the truth, even if it hurts. Don't exaggerate the facts. If there is a justified reason for the handling of information, state it and let the media share as much information as possible. Contrary to popular opinion, most media representatives are reasonable and are willing to work with you, especially the local media, where you are likely to work with them in an ongoing crisis. Don't argue or engage in a battle if the questions cause irritation or frustration. Remember, the reporter gets the last word, not the person being interviewed. Don't say it if you don't want it quoted. One way to remember this is that whatever you say can and probably will be held against you. So again, don't say it if it's something you don't want attributed directly to you. And don't say anything off the record. There is no such thing. Keep your answers short and conversational. Give your headline first, and then support your answers. Don't try to stonewall an interview simply by providing yes or no answers, unless completely appropriate. Be positive in your answers. And don't be curt, especially when the question is one that you feel is dumb or one that you've already answered. Don't restate the question in total or be gratuitous with remarks by saying things such as, "I'm glad you asked that." Don't repeat a reporter's terminology or accept his or her facts and figures until you know they are accurate. Don't let reporters put words in your mouth or ideas in the minds of your audience. After reviewing tips on how to develop and stay on message, let's take a look at General Carter Ham's interview with Wolf Blitzer on CNN.
Clear understanding, General, of what the mission is in Libya right now?
I do. It is threefold. It is execute the arms embargo, it is execute a no-fly zone, and it is to protect civilians.
Is it also to get rid of Gaddafi?
It is not. It is very specifically not that mission.
Why not, since the President has repeatedly said that the U.S. policy is that Gaddafi must go?
It is indeed U.S. policy that the current leader of Libya should no longer be that leader and that he has lost legitimacy. But it has also been a determination that we will not seek to achieve that policy end through military means.
But you work for the President of the United States. He's the commander-in-chief. You report to the President that if he says Gaddafi must go, isn't it your responsibility to implement that policy?
It is the policy, but the President has also stated very clearly to me and to others that we will not seek to achieve that policy goal through military means.
How will the U.S. achieve that policy goal?
Well, I think by other ways, by economic sanctions, certainly by diplomatic effort. There are a number of ways that the international community can apply pressure on the current leader in Libya, but specifically to me, it is not a mission to cause regime change in Libya.
There's no regime change as far as your mission is concerned, even though the President has repeatedly said Gaddafi must go. So it's still a little vague in my mind. How will you know success in Libya when it occurs?
Well, I think we have achieved already a large degree of success. We do have an arms embargo. We do have a no-fly zone. And we have halted a very serious assault by Libyan regime forces toward the city of Benghazi. I don't know how many people we saved on doing that, but I know we saved some. We have an ongoing effort to where we see regime forces attacking civilians, that we take military action to prevent that to the degree that we can. And we have had some success. Have we had complete success? No. And it breaks my heart that that's the situation that we're in, because we find these regime forces taking cover inside built-up areas where they know, because of our concern for civilian casualties, that we won't strike in there. So it's a tough situation right now, but I think we have achieved a large measure of success. A second part of the mission is indeed to transition this to NATO, and we're prepared. We have transitioned one part of the mission, and I think in the coming days we'll transition the other parts of the mission, and we'll do that seamlessly.
Did you see how the interviewer tries to get General Ham to admit the U.S. military is trying to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi? The general did not let the reporter put words into his mouth. He refuses to repeat the interviewer's negative question, and he simply says, "It is not. It is very specifically something." And then he repeats his main message of what his mission is. Now let's take a look at another interview. This one is a staged example of the right way to do an interview.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, sir. You ready for this interview?
Yes.
Okay, let's get your uniform straightened. First, let's take off your badge. Put away your sunglasses.
If you would hang on to.
And your pen, sir. And let me look at your patches here real quick. This one I need to straighten.
Okay.
Okay, so you're good to go.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, how you doing? You Lieutenant Colonel Shropshire?
Yes.
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Howard Forsyth, back in Texas.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I really appreciate you coming out here to do this interview with me.
Happy to.
I saw that you got the 172nd. Were you, where were you at with the 172nd?
Mosul and Baghdad.
Oh, really? 2006?
Yes, 5 and 6.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wasn't there, fortunately, but I had some friends down there, and man, I heard it was rough times.
It was at times. And, but here now we get to helping Americans, helping our fellow citizens out in the homeland.
So, cool. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this interview. We're trying to get the different federal agencies to talk about the flood relief missions. And
okay.
I understand the Army's got some pretty interesting missions that you're doing as well.
Yes, absolutely. We're here to help out. Who have you talked to already?
I talked to FEMA, Bob. I can't remember his last name.
McKnight, I think.
Yeah, the communications guy
sure.
over there. So great interview with him. And if you're ready to go, we'll start going.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about what you're going to be asking, what you're looking for, just to make sure I get you the right information?
Well, specifically, I'm going to be asking about the Army role and the defense role in this total effort. And I know that there's been some talk that things aren't going as planned, and sort of get your opinion on on what some of the criticisms are that the federal government's been facing over the flood relief efforts. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, we'd go ahead and talk to you.
Well, first off, Lieutenant Colonel Shropshire, again, thank you for joining us. And first, if you could just tell me what the Army is doing as part of this flood relief effort.
Our primary focus is saving lives. People are trapped in their homes, and so far we've airlifted over 200 people safely out of those flooded areas.
What's been the biggest challenge for you guys so far?
So far, the weather, the high winds, the heavy rains, but our pilots and their crews are highly skilled and certified and are out there saving lives right now.
Now, a lot of people are saying that because these folks should have evacuated when they first got the warning, it's not worth the risk to military people and the equipment to help them out. What do you say to that?
Well, I can tell you that the governor has asked for our help, and we're doing just that. There are people that are trapped in their homes, and we're working around the clock to get them to safety.
Now, do you think the state and local governments did everything they could have to help people evacuate before this flood?
That's not for me to say, but what I can tell you is there are Americans in need of our help, and we have the equipment and the training and the personnel to get in there and save lives, and that's what we're here to do.
What are the state's plans and FEMA's plans to help these folks once they're evacuated?
It's my understanding that there are several shelters already open, but you'll have to speak to FEMA or the Red Cross to get specifics on that. But what I can tell you is that we are here around the clock saving lives.
Thanks again very much for your time, Lieutenant Colonel Shropshire. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to let everyone in the community know that our thoughts and prayers are with them, and as long as there are people in danger, we will be doing everything we can to get them to safety.
What made this interview so successful? Now that we've seen the right way to conduct an interview, let's take a look at another example. This interview is a good example of what not to do.
KNN, Kosovo News Network, was asked you a few questions about you guys' role here in Kosovo. Okay?
Okay.
State your full name and your unit for me.
My name is Bo Andrew Donaldson, and I'm with the medevac out at Kosovo.
Okay. What is your mission in Kosovo?
We are there to provide a safe and secure country for the people in Kosovo.
Okay. All right. And does the ROE prevent you from acting in self-defense?
No, the ROE does not prevent us from acting in self-defense.
Okay. Good, good. Now, let's say you have to open up.
I don't really know what to do with my hands.
Put them on your side.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right. If you have to open up fire against somebody,
if we have to,
what must you do?
If we have to open up fire against somebody, at that point we would already be firing upon them, and we would probably fire at them.
Okay, but what's going through your mind? Are you just going to fire will till the target's eliminated, or what's your thought process?
I really don't want to shoot at anybody.
Okay. Okay, well, enough. Well, if you have to fire, are you authorized a warning shot?
Yes, we are.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. Can you use force against somebody who's trying to hurt, or let's say someone's trying to steal a weapon or ammunition from K4 personnel? Are you authorized to use force against those individuals?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are authorized to use force against them.
Good enough. All right, well.
What could this soldier have done better? The last interview technique we will cover in this module is the jargon challenge. This one is especially important. Don't use jargon. Most people don't understand it, and be sure to leave it out of your interview. Remember to check yourself and check yourself again. Don't use military jargon or acronyms. Military jargon and phrases such as fog of war or battle ready are war terms and should only be used to describe wars, not a disaster or a crisis here in the homeland. The same goes for using military acronyms. Most people will have no idea what even the most common military acronyms mean, so don't muddy your message with them. If, for instance, you are talking about an incident that involves DCRF, say each word of the acronym. Be able to explain your job in simple language. I am part of the team that is bringing in federal military trucks, helicopters, and doctors that are responding to this disaster. Remember, the public doesn't know a DCO, DCE, RFA, MA, T10, T32. If possible, find someone outside the circle to review or listen. After reviewing the list of interview techniques for an effective interview, can you name 3 good messaging techniques to use? Always tell the truth, be honest, and get your message across. Stay in your lane. If you do not know the answer to a question, or the question is outside the message you have been authorized to deliver, let the reporter know. It is okay to defer the interview until after you have the proper authorization or personnel on hand. You should never comment on what other agencies are doing or how you feel about the response. Focus on your core message. Stick to your message and repeat it often throughout the interview. Reporters and listeners have a limited attention span, and you want to make sure that your message is clear, concise, and memorable regardless of when somebody tunes into the interview. Name 3 of the things you should not do in an interview. Do not speculate. Say facts and stick to the core message. Don't argue with the reporter. Be respectful and fair. The reporter always gets the last word. Don't say it if you don't want to be quoted. Assume you are on the record the entire time, even if you do not believe anything is recording your conversation. Be mindful at all times. For the last video of this module, let's take a look at this video with Staff Sergeant Salvatore Sal Giunta on The Late Show with David Letterman. Take a look.
Please welcome Staff Sergeant Sal Giunta. Nice to see you. Great pleasure, great honor to have you here. Thank you very much. Let's say you and Jen one day have an 18-year-old son, and he comes to you and he says, "I think I'm going down for the free T-shirt."
I'll go buy you one. But I would be so proud. I would be so proud. I would be scared.
Yeah.
I would be scared. I know what happens.
Yes.
But I'd be proud.
But you know more about it than I'll ever know, and thank God. But you know more about it. But even with what you know, you would still encourage your son to do this.
Absolutely. As an American, that is what keeps America free. It's the men and women out there in Afghanistan and Iraq, since 2001 in Afghanistan, since 2003 in Iraq, that allows us to be a free country and allows us to live the lives we do, because them and their families make so many sacrifices.
Well,
the staff sergeant has just received the military's highest award, the Medal of Honor. During the interview, he is not just enthusiastic, but he is also humble. Always remember, the only difference between nervousness and enthusiasm is attitude. So use your adrenaline to your advantage. The staff sergeant connects with his audience with his use of humor and authenticity. Find the authentic messenger in you. This is the final slide for Module 3. Before we finish the recording, we will cover two very important topics: handling bad news and privacy. No matter where it occurs, adverse news cannot be suppressed forever. A very active press will bring the event and facts surrounding it into the public arena sooner or later. Further, for any military media relations program to be believable, bad news, as well as good, must be released to the public as long as the information is not classified. This must be done promptly and with candor. If unanticipated bad news develops, quickly acknowledge observable or established facts in the public domain, but refrain from giving opinions, speculation, or otherwise adding to the story. Be careful of the reporter who says, "Well, we've heard that," and then hopes that you will comment. Stick only to what you know. Deny any allegations, reports, or rumors which are patently false. Any potential bad news stories should be reported immediately to your higher headquarters PAO. Military policy is to protect the personal privacy of individuals from unwarranted invasion. This right is also protected by federal law under the Privacy Act of 1974 and AR 340-21, the Army Privacy Act program. You must guard against any invasion of individual privacy appearing in print or being broadcast. The protection of privacy must also be balanced against the Freedom of Information Act. This act states that, with some specified exceptions, all individuals have equal rights of access to government information. Therefore, if you have any question whether something invades individual privacy, check with your higher headquarters PAO before you print it. However, there are certain things you should not do. Do not ever release any person's street address. You may print release the town in the state. Do not print or release anything about a person's past conduct or performance or their health, which might cause him or her harm or embarrassment. And do not publish or release anything negative about an individual or anything which the individual might be sensitive about. This concludes Module 2, Preparing for an Interview and Interview Techniques. In Module 3, we'll give you tips on how to do the most popular types of interviews and steps to follow once an interview is over. In Module 4, we'll be looking at social media in your personal life as a means of preparing to use social media in a crisis.